I'd like to start by coming to sort of each of you. And when you look at the global landscape, and I know you all have a great lens onto that, what are the unique qualities that you would highlight about BC's tech ecosystem that you think should be front and center as we head into Web Summit? And Wendy, let's start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Jill. Thanks for having me and everyone else. I think there's a lot of strengths, so maybe I'll just kick this off, and I know my colleagues will add to it. I think one of the areas that BC and Vancouver in particular is very unique is how we bring together cross-scientific disciplines to create solutions to problems. In the life sciences sector, I usually add the word health. But you look at the history of some of the innovation that has come out of BC that has been very successful, and you see that cross-scientific discipline. So angiotech was first drug-eluting stent. You've got Canary Medical that is, combining data with medical devices, Accelera. I mean, the list goes on. Aspect. I also think that one of the reasons that we became so quickly strong in digital health and health tech was that we saw a lot of people move from gaming and the tech sector into being more focused on health. And a lot of that is the gamifying of health, which I know Loc will jump into as well. But it really is one, I think that's when Web Summit was first announced to be coming to Vancouver, the first thing I said to Minister Bailey was, this is our opportunity to demonstrate how, as an ecosystem broadly, we bring these cross-scientific disciplines together to very quickly come up with solutions that are meaningful to the world.
Thank you, Wendy. You've queued up Loc so well. I need to go to him next. Tell me about the connections between health tech and gaming.
And thanks for having me, Jill, and thanks for the shout outs there, Wendy. Yes, so we've tracked our talent over time, and yeah, it's pretty amazing to see that the flow of talent, which I'll talk about a little bit later, has moved through some of our largest companies from the EAs and the Blackbirds. As people grow and mature, they move into other sectors, and life sciences has been a great beneficiary of our sector. The other piece I wanted to talk about around global competition was, there's a lot of talk about hubs, right? And yes, we need them for startups, but what people don't realize on the global front is we're already a top 3 global hub in video games and animation, right? So some of the world's most enjoyed IP and video games and things that we watch are actually made here. And a couple of like hard brick and mortar examples, EA is now expanded into 3 buildings in BC. Netflix Animation just opened a 110,000 square foot facility yesterday, creating 450 jobs. And then another couple hundred will be joining them this fall from Netflix Eyeline. So, tying this to Web Summit, we're going to be featuring some of these companies at Web Summit this year.
That is fantastic. Yeah, that was really exciting to see that opening yesterday. Congratulations. It's exciting for all of us. Erica, what would you say are the qualities of BC's ecosystem that you'd highlight?
Yeah, thank you, Jill. And I just wanted to start by saying how wonderful it is to connect with my fellow panelists. It's such a pleasure. And also thanks to our audience. So great to see so many of our members. I've been looking in the chat, seeing so many of our members on the call. At BC Tech, we engage with more than 1,500 members across every stage in their journey. So that's what I really think is quite unique. Is the life cycle of the companies in BC and the strength of that, from the scrappy startups who are just starting out and have big ambitions, to those scale-up companies that are scaling up their businesses across AI, life sciences, clean tech, SaaS, quantum, and so much more, to the incredible anchor companies like the Global Relays and the Trulios, who are now globally recognized leaders. So what I see is the strength and uniqueness is really how we harness the power of that flywheel, right? Having anchor companies succeed really helps drive talent, capital, and experience back into our ecosystem, which in turn supports that next wave of growth for startup and scale ups. So for me, the story is really uniquely about, not just individual companies, but showcasing the ecosystem where startups, scale ups, and anchor companies can individually succeed and also lift up the ecosystem in the process. I'll also just touch on an earlier point made that this is an exciting opportunity to showcase our overall sector and recognize it as the really significant economic driver that it is. You mentioned it in your opening remarks, Jill. But the tech sector is growing 3 times the pace of the general economy. So it's really important that we take that moment on stage for the really exceptional sector that we are. So that's, I think, what I see as our unique qualities.
Thank you, Erica. Peter, how would you pull it all together?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And as well, thank you for hosting today and bringing us all together for this great discussion. The way I would think about it is, I've traveled around the world and been to lots of different cities and worked in lots of different cities. And the piece that's common in many other cities is they can essentially work where they live and grow their business locally, working in San Francisco, working in Boston, working in Paris, working in London. Whereas in BC, if we want to grow businesses here, we have to learn how to be internationally competitive from day one. So I think our unique piece we can showcase, again, keeping in mind we have 15 to 20,000 people coming to Vancouver for an entire week, hundreds of investors, hundreds of media, we can show that we can belong on the world stage. So our uniqueness is being able to compete internationally from day one because it's built into how we need to grow. And then using this as a platform to show we belong without even having to leave our house.
Fantastic. Okay. So big ambition, and let's take some credit and give some congratulations to our ecosystem for what is already being achieved. And where we're already succeeding globally. And I think particularly Loc and Wendy, your sectors really deserve a really strong round of applause for where you already are on the global stage. But we don't want to pretend everything's perfect. Nothing could possibly be improved. So some of the areas that we focus on is looking at some of the building blocks around global competitiveness. So stronger procurement pathways, stronger access to domestic capital, making sure the talent pipeline is really strong, and thinking about increasing the success of the inventions that we come up with being commercialized. So from your point of view, how can we help our communities to make progress on those things so that we can be even better and bigger than we are right now? And how collectively can we use Web Summit to advance those kinds of topics? So Loc, may I start with you?
Yeah, so for our sectors, we represent both video games, but also the digital part of the film sector. And tax credits has been a very important piece, right? So we have recently received increases for both the interactive digital media tax credit as well as production services and DAVE tax credits. So preserving those are going to be key to maintaining any kind of competitiveness. But we know that for homegrown, without IP supports, and this is something Peter and I talk about a lot, we can't do anything with just tax credits, right? So we've been working with InnovateBC and CreativeBC to try and develop programs around this. And then recently, just last week, in my role as the chair of the Canadian Interactive Alliance, we were able to get a 36% increase in IP funding for interactive digital media across the country. So there's now a $57 million fund in this area federally, which every BC company is eligible to apply for. And then you mentioned talent, Jill. So talent is one of our top strengths, and that's one of the top 3 things that are always on the list when companies are looking at expanding here or setting up shop here. So I think bringing that all together, you mentioned it, Erica, that the concept of the flywheel, what we've discovered between Web Summit Vancouver and Qatar and the big one in Lisbon and then Rio is there's a flywheel that we can take advantage of here. Our entry point is Vancouver for all BC companies and all Canadian companies, and then we can really get on and leverage this global flywheel of business opportunities.
That's so powerful. Yeah, that flywheel model. But you make such a good point that we can incent and we can encourage and we can have the very, very, very necessary tax credits, but we also need to have that IP piece. And Peter, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring you on that. You're one of the most powerful speakers that I've heard talking about the importance of this. But so please do speak to IP, but answer the question more broadly as well.
Sure.
How do we really accelerate our success?
Yeah, so I'll maybe answer the question in the context of, with Web Summit coming to town. I think the one piece that when I step back and look at it from 100,000-foot view is we have a major event coming that lets Loc and lets Wendy you organize what you typically would during the year, do it with purpose. To be able to coordinate between each other on events, to coordinate your membership or cross membership, to coordinate one or two messages into government, you now have an event you can do that around. So we are trying to, procure ways and capital, talent, which is government. Some provides the context and the framework to have this, we know that government there. And so the way I would encourage the community to think about it is in two layers, and how we can use the Web Summit. The first one is align on what some messaging that supports are needed on, and we can unpack that in maybe some later conversations. And the second, use Web Summit as the event to triangulate where those messages need to be put into government. Web Summit is one of the events that, for us to keep hosting it, is going to need the ecosystem's support, and you want to come. And I think now that we've been through it 1 year and we're heading into 2 year, it's like having the Olympics come. There's a whole bunch of stuff around it that happens that creates net benefits. And so again, it's collectively, where do you put your time? It's using this opportunity as best you can to coordinate with your peers, your partners, and to get your messaging aligned, and then to get them into government, which unlocks procurement discussions, which unlocks talent attraction, which unlocks IP discussions. So just use it as it's a great tool for the ecosystem to take advantage of.
Fantastic. Okay, challenge accepted. Wendy, you have the pen, you have the conch. Tell us what would be your top 1 or 2 messages for government.
Oh, for government. I thought we were talking about Web Summit.
Well, what would be these messages that we would align around? I think we're hearing a lot of consistent.
So I think, we talk a lot, all of us individually and collectively together talk a lot about what makes a thriving ecosystem. And so for the life sciences sector, it starts with world-class research and science. And so that continuity of funding into research is critically important. And there's different places where that happens. And I would argue for those people that are attending Web Summit, they actually are and from our experience of our investor conference, people are interested in not only what exists today, but what's in the pipeline. So, early stage product development or early stage life sciences research is sometimes equally as interesting to investors and the media as what is currently looking at them in the face at that particular time. So we try and take the advantage of demonstrating that at Web Summit. When you look at the breadth of the companies that are going to be part of the BC Pavilion, you're going to see people that have things to sell, and you're going to see people that are only just into the clinic, if not earlier. And then a thriving ecosystem, and this is going to take us back to when we used to be part of the Innovation Roundtable. Is enabled by capital, talent, infrastructure for life sciences. That's clinical trials facilities. The new St. Paul's is a really exciting opportunity that's happening in Vancouver that we're going to try and showcase at Web Summit. And in particular, the building next door through the Skybridge, the Clinical Research Support Center, and there's an innovation floor in it. Those types of things are really important to demonstrate to the world that structure and infrastructure is there to support the growing of the sector. IP, Peter talked about. I could go on forever about data, but I'll have to be invited to a data webinar someday as opposed to diving in right now. And then ultimately adoption of innovation, which creates world-class companies, creates the product solutions and services that people need and want to procure. And as you may or may not be aware right now, there are a lot of discussions of the important role that life sciences plays in medical countermeasures and biodefense. And I would suspect that is going to make its way into Web Summit as well. So I often use this expression, speak into the listening ears of the person that you're trying to convince. So, depending on who we're talking to, depends on what enabler we're asking for. Because the government obviously can do a lot in funding, but they can also do a lot in policy shaping that removes barriers for businesses to grow. So any one of those is critically important. And I will just add, there was one exciting announcement today for anybody that is in the life sciences sector, and that's BDC has announced a dedicated life sciences fund of $150 million. So a little bit more capital coming into this sector, which is obviously critically important.
Fantastic. Really well done. So, okay. So Erica, let's come to you. So we've got, we're talking about what are the key messages? What are the key themes? If we were to simplify, what would be the key things we would want to have heard?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love everything I heard from our fellow panelists. There's certainly like a real opportunity, right, with Web Summit to deliver value, but we have to harness it. Some of the themes I heard certainly resonate with our policy work at BC Tech around focusing on talent, capital pathways, funding and support for scale-ups so they can succeed. And customers as being the best kind of capital, but also being very future focused, because if we don't ask for what we need for our sector now, we won't have the ingredients in place for that future success that Wendy, you spoke to, right? The thinking later down the path. So from a policy perspective, like as Peter said, we have a unique opportunity. We have government's attention squarely focused on tech for this conference and throughout the year, but for this conference in particular. So we should be vocal about our needs for our sector, what we need to be competitive from those, local procurement pathways, really trying to buy more in BC and in Canada of our local tech, continuing to have a sustained focus on skilled talent, as some of my colleagues mentioned, and make sure that we can kind of see that sustained growth over time. We're in a great place, but we need to really make sure we have the supports in place to harness the opportunity. So that's kind of what I heard as the cumulative value of what the panel had to say.
Okay, well, I will admit that is a long list of things, but we did hear some key top level messages there. And I'm confident that we will take the challenge, Peter, of making sure that we're keeping our message simple and concrete and emphasizing the positive and the upside and what comes if we make these necessary investments. So I want to return to the sort of positive boost in the arm energy that I think this panel can deliver on this eve of Web Summit. So BC companies, in my view, sometimes underestimate just how impressive they are in a global context. And each of those of you around the table have direct experience of that, where people are modestly Canadian about what they're achieving and perhaps not shouting it from the rooftops. We've heard several examples of that already. But what advice would you give? How would you encourage people who are attending Web Summit and the events that are around it, or frankly, talking to investors and customers year round? What would you encourage them to emphasize? And Peter, let's start with you.
Sure. I think I'll go a little bit back to my first answer because I want to underscore it's around, our companies know how to compete internationally and we're here to grow. And so, when the world's coming to us, it gives us the ability to benchmark us against our competition because they're going to be in our house for a week. And to be able to say to the investors, like, that's my competition. I'm way better than that. I know how to do this. We can do it for cheaper. We can do it for higher quality, and we can export stuff much faster and with higher quality. So I think it's being able to confidently showcase with your competition in the room, and you can actually go touch and feel and talk with your competition at the booths to see what their products and services are actually made of. So again, an opportunity to be able to showcase what we have, but not have to travel somewhere and say you compete with somebody, but them not be in the room next to you. I think there's opportunity to show what we have and win with what we bring to the table with competition right there.
I think that's really astute. Erica, to pick it up where Peter left it off, because I know you've got a lot to say on this topic. Erica is relentlessly ambitious for our members. So tell us what you would encourage BC companies to think about as they approach opportunities like this.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, certainly to the team's earlier point, having this conference in your backyard is a huge opportunity. But it is part of a year-round cycle for our members. So I see this as being an important moment in the calendar, and I hope people are thinking about that as they're planning their time for Web Summit. At BC Tech, when I'm working with companies directly, we see our role and our programming as being part of helping companies accelerate faster than they could on their own. And so we're doing that through a number of ways throughout the year to help companies move from startups into scale-ups. I'll touch on a few things. Jill already set me up to talk a lot, so I have an open floor. But we certainly have so much that people can lean into throughout the year that will set you up for success for Web Summit and for your business goals throughout the year. A few things I'll mention. We have a dedicated Startup Founders Council that meets quarterly, that does fantastic work. We have a Dragons mentorship program for startups so they can connect with experienced operators and help them with their businesses. We run that throughout the year. We have live educational webinars like the one we're at today. We run 14 of those throughout the year on key topics for companies as they're scaling up. We also have our online curriculum, which is an educational platform with tons of great content that people can tap into for advice. We host a startups dinner on the eve of Web Summit every year, speaking to some of those side events that add so much value to the experience at Web Summit is getting out to those side events. And then that work feeds into our programming for scale-ups as they're going to accelerate their success. So BC Tech hosts 10 different peer-to-peer C-suite forums that support over 400 executives throughout the year that include focuses on specific tech verticals, as well as many role-specific forums where they can connect with peers and talk about their business challenges and their goals as they go into events like Web Summit. We also provide, support in terms of investor connections and advisor connections, and we host a number of curated events throughout the year. We also have one, major event or two major events upcoming on the calendar, including our main member summit that we host, a day focused on programming for companies to work on their business goals, as well as our, of course, another great event in the calendar is, of course, our annual Technology Impact Awards. But when we're working with companies, it's thinking about that holistic view of how they're showing up, how they're building their business across the entire year and harnessing amazing opportunities like Web Summit, where they have that global stage to build on and extend that further.
Okay, so we've got Peter's call to action that we are exporters by nature. We've got a small local market. We're all experienced in being successful globally. And in this unique forum, we've got people coming and competitors will be there, and you can draw the direct comparisons. As Erica says, there's supports throughout the year, not just from BC Tech, but from the other organizations on the call. And you can leverage those to make sure that you shine when the moment arrives. But for Loc and Wendy, let's hear more about what you think you would encourage BC innovators to really emphasize, what gives them the edge at Web Summit. And Loc, I know you've been to several Web Summits around the world regularly. So maybe you can bring that unique perspective too.
Yeah, so picking up from what Erica and Peter said, and looking at coming from our sector exists and competes globally by default, just by the nature of the way it works, right? But what Web Summit is allowing is earlier stage companies are getting a sense of what it's going to be like on the bigger stages, right? And it's that entry into the flywheel that you're talking about, that it's an easier path for them to try things here, to try them in Lisbon. These aren't specifically for our sector. They're the general tech conferences, which is great because it's a different audience, right? And then in parallel to that, they're able to then focus on sector specific events as well, right? So, and yeah, you mentioned the other programs like and Wendy will obviously talk about her rate program that she has at and we both partner with Innovate on the Road to Web Summit, which has been a really good program that helps companies get ready for Web Summit. Those early stage companies we're talking about, right? And then that we partnered with one of our own programs called DigiBC Elevate that does exactly a multiple flywheel. So we have the Web Summit flywheel, and then it allows our companies to get ready for large game conferences like Gamescom in Germany or G-Star in Korea, right? And then our own event Signals in the fall here. And this year, because of the opportunity for Web Summit, we're even looking at how can we align with some of our federal goals and open up our pathways to Asia. So we're rebranding one of our events to Can Asia in order to try and create these additional smaller flywheels for our sector that then feed into the bigger flywheel of a general tech conference, right? And I think for companies on the ground, I think we shouldn't be shy to market the fact for BC that we have tax credits, talent, community, right? Those are three solid strengths that they can help us by talking about to anyone who will listen.
Love it. I got 3 bullet points. Fantastic. But thank you for putting that in the context of what's happening year round and the supports that you're providing. Wendy, I know you're doing the same thing. So tell us about your contributions.
Well, we, as Loc mentioned, are a partner with InnovateBC on the Road to Web Summit programming. We were last year, and we are this year again. In fact, my colleague Ryan is off on one of our programs right now. So a lot of the Road to Web Summit programming is really centered on trying to have companies be at their best when Web Summit arrives on the doorsteps. And so we've tried, based off of learnings of last year, to also be very coordinated in what we're doing, what Loc's doing, what everybody else is doing, because some of these skills are sector agnostic. Some of them are, there's commonality, and then there's some that are very sector specific. And so we've tried to really collaborate on some of that. But generally, a little bit like Loc was saying, we've really been positioning Web Summit for our sector as, for those that see great value in it, because with the life sciences sector, there's a specific type of investor and a specific type of media that are coming. And so for some organizations, they see huge value, and they've been running around the world with Loc and get a lot of stamps on their passport. But we've really been positioning this to investors primarily around this is essentially a 3-year cycle. We have our Invest in BC conference in the fall that we host. Last year, we had 100 investors come into British Columbia that were specifically focused on life sciences. And then we have Web Summit 6 months later. And this cycle just keeps on going on for 3 years. And if Peter's successful, maybe it will go on for many, many more years as well. But in addition, we lead delegations to international conferences. So you also have those touch points throughout the year. And as everybody knows, it takes a while to actually get from meeting an investor to having a deal. And so this continuity of touch points and being able to deepen the relationships and keep people up to speed on what is happening and understanding from an investor what's the next milestone that you're interested in, keeping that dialogue going is really important, which is why it's important that Web Summit wasn't just a 1-year event. Because you see this in what happened in Lisbon with Web Summit. and how the tech sector really grew around that and that lasting impact that had happened. So, this is I'm talking more broadly right now, but for companies, again, you've got to seek out those opportunities to be at your best, have an elevator speech. You don't need to, life sciences companies get stuck in this all the time because we get stuck in our science. And it's like, have your elevator speech, make the connection, and then find out what people are looking for and what they want to invest in and determine if that's a fit. And it may not be a fit today. Somebody that they met last year they might not have been at the right stage, either the investor or the company, but when they meet them again this year, they're going to find themselves closer together.
I love it. Yeah, I sometimes joke that sometimes the lab coat gets caught in the elevator door when it comes to pitching. Okay, so thinking about what could be the outcome of all of this great work and this real focus and alignment and coming together of a community. So if Web Summit were to lead to one outcome that meaningfully moved the needle and accelerated the success of BC's tech growth, what would you expect it to be, and why? So Erica, we'll start with you, give you the hot spot first.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'll keep it pretty short, and I'm gonna, we really listened to our members, and so the polls earlier resonated with me. For me, this success has to be measurable. We hear from our members that visibility alone it's not enough. It needs to move the needle. So where the conversations at Web Summit can convert into customers, into partnerships or capital, that's really critical. And we do host, through our C councils throughout the year, we hear from our members about the outcomes of their experiences at events like Web Summit and really kind of keep track of where those successes started and where they land at the end. So if we hear companies in our membership coming back with qualified pipeline, deals in motion, that's fantastic to hear. And certainly connecting back to the poll, if they come back saying that they were able to get customer leads, the most efficient form of capital, and can prioritize those conversations and accelerating them, that'll have a direct impact on growth. And that's what we want to see. So that's, for me, what I think is most important.
Okay, thank you, Erica. So Peter, what one shift would you like to see?
Yeah, I might end up putting Loc on the spot here to tell a story. So I'll try to tee him up so he knows what story I'm asking him to tell. But I think I build on Wendy's comments that I think the meaningful shift that's sustainable that we want to have and want to see is Web Summit becomes part of the journey of customer growth for companies to rely on. And I say that from the perspective of, I actually met companies last year that got some new customers. They ended up meeting them on the floor. But there's also, we can't forget, there's 3 or 4 other Web Summits around the world. And I know there is Web Summit, because Web Summit comes to Vancouver, we work with Web Summit and they keep asking us, can we put more BC companies up on stage in Qatar? How can we help you make companies visible when we go to Portugal? So there is an opportunity to promote companies and have them be successful. I know Loc led a delegation down to Portugal, and I do know that there's some companies that have each Web Summit they've gone to, not Vancouver, Qatar, Portugal, they've had successive growth that only happened because they were at those events. It's just, again, the serendipitous connections and bringing in investors that they never would have bumped into at events. So coming back to the meaningful shift is this just becomes part of the customer growth that we rely on, and we leverage, and we do that not just by leveraging what happens here in town, but also taking advantage of what happens overseas in the other Web Summit events, because we are connected with those. So I'll leave it with that, and hopefully Loc will figure out what story to tell with it.
Loc, my job is simple. Over to you.
Well, I did have one KPI before I jumped into that. I had 3 really quick ones, but they tie into this. So I'll say them backwards. When we agreed as a sector that Web Summit was a good idea, we supported Finance Minister Brenda Bailey's vision of 3,000 deals, right? So for us, FDI success, and then homegrown IP success. And then with that, to Peter's throw and story, Wendy Peter, Rob Gehring from AI and BC, and I organized a delegation to Web Summit Lisbon. Rob and I went, and it was amazing to see. We were supporting the startups we brought that Invest Vancouver supported going there. One of the startups, we watched them over the year, start at Web Summit Vancouver. They're an AI company. And then they learned some lessons at Viva Tech and All In, but then they went to Web Summit Lisbon, and they were really masterful at how they only took 5 meetings, and each of those meetings increased their opportunities, came home, did the same thing at Qatar, right? And so we're really hoping to not let the cat out of the bag, that there will be some kind of announceable from this in the next few months, maybe in May. So that's but yeah, I think that's what you wanted me to talk about, right, Peter?
Okay, from your lips. Wendy, do you want to bring it home? What meaningful shift do you want to see?
Well, at a macro basis, that going back to my original comment, is that Vancouver and British Columbia is known as one of the epicenters globally in the tech center, and known for, again, what I think is very unique when you look around the world is how the cross-scientific disciplines come together in all of our various sectors. And, you see that that's where a lot of innovation is going anyway. And so we're well positioned to play a global leadership role in that sense. So I think, first of all, people recognizing this strength that we have, and that is also us recognizing it and us being able to scream from the rooftops about how strong this sector is. I think that's really important. Obviously, getting the deals is important. Tracking the deals is way more difficult. So Loc, if you're able to do that, that's great. But I think that's it. I also think companies need to think about what their objectives are as they enter into Web Summit. And I think you're going to jump on that, so I won't go too deep. But just showing up and walking around without having a plan is going to make it very difficult to be a great return for organizations. It's like any other conference.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let's stay with you on that question, Wendy, because I do want to go a bit deeper on that. Make sure we give people practical advice as well as the big picture thinking. So when you think about it, founders are going to be meeting investors, they're going to meet customers, they're going to meet potential partners, they may meet some policymakers. But how can they decide how to prioritize their time and use their limited resources well to get the most they possibly can out of this conference? So how would you help them with that decision making and resource allocation of time? And we'll start with Wendy, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think some of the Road to Web Summit programming is intended to help them do exactly that. So, engaging in the Road to Web Summit in advance of Web Summit arriving, talking to people that have attended Web Summit before, and, really having those honest conversations about not only what went well, but what would they do differently in the future, or what are some of those, watch outs that, you want to try and avoid. There's nothing like talking to people that have been through it before to get some perspective. And I think really thinking about the goals, so you're ending up showing up in the right place. So it's a big conference. There's a lot going on. I ended up spending the entire day at the BC Pavilion last year because of the various programming that was going on. But I think that's really important. But in that sense, that's where it's like any other conference. There's different programs, there's different things there's different stuff going on with Web Summit that many of our companies are involved in. There's partnering opportunities, there's side events. So really thinking about what are those opportunities that are going to best meet my goals. Sometimes I use this expression. The first year I went to the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, my objective was literally to do a reconnaissance, was to go there, see what's going on, and figure out where those if there were opportunities for LifeSciences BC to engage, and if so, what they were. And then the next year I went back with very purposeful objectives because I kind of knew what I was trying to do and I knew where the biggest bang could be for our buck, for our members. I also think it goes without saying, many of us are member organizations. I always say our members travel in our suitcase wherever we go. So also helping us understand how we can support them through Web Summit is also really important because we will also be out there moving around and doing various things. And, like Jill, I know you do, and Loc and Peter and Erica, we spend a lot of time introducing people to each other. So the more we know how we can help, that's really of great benefit. For us, one of the things we're doing is trying to, every investor we meet, we try and get them to come back in November so that we create that opportunity of that carry-on relationship in a very focused manner. But we also, when we meet with investors, try and find out what they want. And regardless if they're a member or not, we're going to introduce them to whoever we know is doing what the work is.
Fantastic. Okay. So very thoughtful answer there. Peter, what would your number one piece of advice on focusing your time?
Well, I've never been to the JP Morgan conference, but I've been to Disneyland. And I can tell you, if you don't plan Disneyland for the day, you end up blowing your whole day. And I think Web Summit, if you've been there before, you'll appreciate my comment. It is the same thing. You need to do some pre-planning. Think of Web Summit as a business development opportunity, and you have to know who you want to hit up and where they're at. Web Summit does promote their app very heavily, but it is well used that week, and it's how you make connections with people on the platform. But I'd say there's two other things to think about. The first one is InnovateBC, we're hosting a Road to Web Summit Bootcamp May 6th. I think the details are on our website. That's like a full day boot camp on tips and tricks and workshops on how to be prepared for Web Summit. So look for that. But the other thing is, it's not just about Web Summit. It is the side events. So it's understanding and figuring out where those events are going to be at. If Jill's hosting something, if Loc or Wendy for their members, making sure you understand where that's going to be and how you can get into those events, because the side events are also where connection happens. So again, it's doing your plan, making sure you're prepared going into that, which is, either the boot camp or working with one of the associations on where their membership is going to go as the suitcase moves around. And then day of, like Wendy, I think I went to one or two talks. I spent most of the time in the pavilion, just talking with companies, seeing what was on the floor and seeing where the competition was. So again, good reconnaissance, and you got to plan ahead if you want to make best use of it. Again, keeping in mind Loc's story of figure out what works, use it as a test, and start to build and use the other Web Summits is a good secret sauce to growing your organization.
Fantastic. I love that Disneyland analogy. It's so apt. Erica, what would you advise?
Yeah, I'll keep it short, a bit more tactical, but I would say the companies that get the most out of Web Summit are really intentional. So one exercise that I recommend to folks is to write your press release of success. What would you love to be able to say coming out of the event? What would that press release or investor update or internal newsletter, what would it say? And then hold yourself accountable. So that would be my advice, is set your goals really clearly ahead of time, and it'll help you focus your time and your energy on the right opportunities. And then one other part is just making sure you have an aftercare plan. How are you going to follow up with people? How are you going to stay in touch in the long term? What are the future meetings or opportunities or events where you'll connect with those folks again? So how do you turn those initial conversations, those sparks, into outcomes that are going to move your business forward?
Fantastic. And Loc, you have the last word on this one.
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate, plan, prepare, book your meetings strategically. When in our Road to Web Summit, we have a famous example of a 3-slide pitch deck that comes from one of our founders. It's just such a valuable lesson. And then for us, our sector, when you get to other video game conferences, you're having to pitch anywhere, sometimes in hotel lobbies, outdoor gardens, right? It can be unconventional. So the other thing is take advantage of each conference's specific opportunities. So the startup supports and Web Summit are really good. I think from the Disneyland example, our sector, for example, has a company that organizes side events for government and industry associations. So if you get on that, you get that kind of fast track that you do at Disneyland, right? So And then remember, it's a journey. Yes, you have to do the elevator pitches, but it's about building connections. In in our sector, you're never going to close a deal at one event, right? So, to what Peter was saying, for Road to Web Summit, we're doing a full dress rehearsal event April 29th for our DigiBC Elevate, where we're mocking, not design mocking, just functionally mocking the pavilion and the startup island for our company so they can practice.
Fantastic. Okay, I love it. There's a fast pass as well. This is great. Okay, so I just want to finish with one question that I always ask my panelists. So this is less specific to Web Summit, but totally relevant to Web Summit. But we always have a lot of startups on the line. And sometimes the conversations that we have can feel a little bit intimidating. They tend to be lean teams who are really focused. So what words of encouragement would you give the startups on the line? Just a short, pithy piece of advice, whether it's for Web Summit or more generally to encourage them along their journey. Erica, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it tight. I'd encourage founders to be ambitious, leave your Canadian kind of humble pie at home, take advantage of being on the world stage at Web Summit. I also like to remind our members, our startups, that everyone who's made it, like Jack Newton of Clio, was once upon a time walking a trade show floor, just like you. So really embrace that opportunity.
Thank you. Loc.
Leverage the community. We have a wealth of founders, so find a mentor among them, get their advice.
Fantastic. Wendy.
Have fun. People like interacting with people that have energy, and believe in yourself, because we do have the best ecosystem here, and all of our startups are part of it. And there's a whole community around that wants them to be successful. So take advantage of that, but also have fun.
Thank you. And Peter.
I'll maybe build on the last couple points. There's a lot of people in your corner that want you to be successful. Web Summit is being brought in as one of those tools. We want to know what works and we want to keep doing it. So take advantage of it while it's here, and let us know what else we're missing.
Thank you so much. Really inspirational words. And thank you, Wendy, for bringing the visual beauty of our ecosystem to life for all of us today.